Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Wherever this finds you today, you're very welcome joining us on the latest in the VanillaPlus series of thought leadership webinars. I'm Jeremy Cowan. I'm the editor and founder of VanillaPlus. And for any service providers contemplating offering cloud services, we've got a fascinating discussion for you today. It's on how to transform your OSS and BSS systems and processes to enable those cloud services. And it focuses on the work of Aricent. Our key speaker today is Hamid Modarressi. Now, Hamid is Vice President of the Business Process Group at Aricent, which provides expert consulting services to communication service providers. That's a bit of a mouthful, so let's just call them CSPs, shall we? And he works in transforming and optimizing processes and systems and organization. Hamid's group supports short and long-term OSS, BSS architecture and development planning. He was a founder and CEO of Everest Broadband Networks and has served as Vice President and CIO of Bell Atlantic, now Verizon Global Networks. So Hamid has massive experience in this area, and I'm really delighted that he's going to share that with us today. Our other main speaker today is Dan Baker. Dan is a senior analyst at the Technology Research Institute, a familiar face to regulars on the VanillaPlus Thought Leadership webinar series, and I'm pleased to say a valued member of the advisory board of VanillaPlus. Gentlemen, welcome to you both.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Pleased to be here, Jeremy.
Great to have you guys. Thank you. Now, apologies to anyone already familiar with the next bit, but it is important that I remind everyone that this is a truly interactive webinar, and in two ways. The first is that we'll be asking you in a short while to take part in 3 anonymous polls. We'll bring you the results immediately. Please remember, I can't see how you voted, nor can our panel, so it's up to you to tell us exactly what you think. The second point is that there will also be a question and answer session with Hamid and Dan at the end. You can send me your questions at any time. Just type them into the window marked Ask a Question. That's on your screen now. So I will put as many of them as possible to our speakers on your behalf at the end of the session. If there are any that we are unable to get to, please don't worry. We will pass your questions to Aricent, and they will be able to respond to you offline. So let me have your questions anytime from now on. Now, I don't want to delay any further. I'd like to hand the floor over to Dan Baker. Dan.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. I also suspect this topic of cloud computing has got a lot of VanillaPlus readers curious. I mean, I'm a regular reader of Information Week, and almost in every issue of that magazine there's a story related to cloud computing. But the issue before us today is really, exactly how is this relevant to the telecoms industry? And given that every major systems integrator, software giant, internet player wants to get into this game, I mean, will there be enough room for telecoms to make any money at it? My hunch says yes. There's absolutely a big opportunity here, and the good thing for VanillaPlus readers is that having a robust BOSS is what's needed to deliver it. But telecoms first need to do some careful planning, make some strategic investments to carve out their niche within this broader market. Okay, so why do I and so many other people see a big future in cloud services? Well, to begin with, the IT world is moving in that direction. And I would point to things like the rise of netbooks that imply you store a lot of your data on the web rather than a hard disk. The same goes for smartphones that heavily leverage web-based resources. Microsoft itself, the king of the desktop, is putting some serious energy into creating a compelling cloud computing environment. And in only 10 years, Salesforce.com, which offers CRM on a software-as-a-service model, achieved $1.3 billion in annual sales in 2009. And I'll remind you, it took Oracle 16 years to reach the same level of sales. So I think this is a strong proof point, too. Then there's the growth in unified communications, things like video conferencing. They're a natural for cloud computing. and will be especially attractive to enterprises. Now, some people point to security as a drawback to cloud computing, but here I beg to differ. At TRI, we recently published a research report on advanced network security for large enterprises, and in that study, we talk about how vulnerable desktop computers are to infection by a botnet, which essentially transforms your PC into a so-called zombie that can be controlled remotely. The zombie lies in wait for the right time to either steal your personal identity or works in concert with thousands of other zombies to launch a denial-of-service attack to bring down a corporate or government website. So your average desktop PC, as much as you and I may be very attached to it, is in many ways a security disaster waiting to happen. And for this reason, it makes a lot of sense to move to a more central and security-managed computing model in the cloud. The developing world in Africa, Eastern Europe, Middle East is certainly a more greenfield environment, and it makes it a very fertile ground for cloud computing to grow. Those regions don't have the legacy IT infrastructure and staffing that the industrialized world has, and that, frankly, is one of the biggest barriers to cloud computing adoption. A lot of this relates to the comfort zone of users and IT managers. I mean, it's the younger generation of computer users from all corners of the world who will drive cloud computing. Those are the folks who are steadily moving into the workforce, and that generation is quite comfortable working with web office tools, even if those applications seem underpowered to older guys like me who are comfortable with desktop apps. You know, it wasn't long ago that the term cloud was a telecom industry term. I mean, we owned that term. I mean, it meant long-haul networks, and it still does, of course. But it's interesting how the slick marketers of the IT world have basically co-opted the cloud term to the point that people don't even consider telecoms major cloud vendors. And this is sad because telecoms are the true eagles of the cloud, I'll say. I mean, Circuit Voice, I mean, it's the most successful cloud service that was ever invented. So it's a shame that we in the telecom industry often don't put our best foot forward sometimes. Our attitude ought to be, hey, wait a minute, Amazon, Microsoft, and Google. You may know a thing or two about web apps and software, but when it comes to highly available, high bandwidth services in the cloud, I mean, you're stepping into my house now. So don't pretend you can deliver something more than an over-the-top cloud service, unless, of course, I help you deliver that extra value. Most of you, I'm sure, learned about real clouds, not virtual clouds, in your grade school science class, and that's what's illustrated in this diagram. And, of course, we have everything from low-lying clouds like Cumulus and Stratus to high-flying clouds like Cirrus. And then there's that strange breed of clouds, the cumulonimbus, or thunder clouds, that span the high and low altitudes. Okay, so I think this slide shows exactly where telecoms can establish their leadership. Amazon and the rest of the overtop crowd live in the upper atmosphere where the air is rather thin. And since it's mostly geeks who live in those companies, they can get by with less oxygen anyway, right? Now, we all know that the over-the-top guys, they own lots of commodity data centers next to electric power plants, and they also know quite a bit about selling and managing their services through portals on the web. But at the same time, they cannot guarantee high availability across the communication network, because that's not their game. Telecoms, on the other hand, can uniquely deliver the full stack of services top to bottom. They can do both high availability computing across IP and also deliver and manage highly reliable, low latency access to those computers via the local loop. Well, the over-the-top players, however, the communication side is merely best effort. I mean, they can sign up with multiple telecom carriers, but because they don't own or manage the quality of the full end-to-end communications through an OSS, they really can't deliver a truly reliable service on their own. And if there are any telecom sales guys in the audience who want a slogan for their cloud computing sales campaign, I mean, this slide is for you. I mean, when I say telecoms can play in the fog, I mean the access network where many of the tough problems around cloud computing lie. The telecoms are the only player who can guarantee end-to-end service level agreements, or SLAs, and a BT can come in and say, I can guarantee end-to-end performance across many offices and guarantee a certain latency for your global corporation. Maybe the business requires some extra bandwidth to run video conferencing at certain times of the month. Well, an administrator could demand more capacity for a particular site at that time, and so you could increase the bandwidth accordingly. and you supply them with a portal to allow them to do fulfillment, on-demand provisioning, and you build them for the usage. The key, and this is what Hamid is going to talk about, is you have to have the integration hooks in your system and the intelligence in the network to know when the extra capacity is needed and how to deliver it. Now, telecoms need to be selective in the customers they choose. Consumers and very small businesses are probably left to the ISPs to go after. The group generally doesn't require high availability, nor are they a match for the direct sales force that telecoms use. The truly large enterprises also are not very attractive because they are encumbered by legacy and have a very strong IT capability on their own. In many cases, they even have a strong communications expertise. But medium-sized companies are more flexible on where they spend their IT dollar. And being able to offload software to the cloud is attractive for those types of companies because they don't have to deal with the upgrades, patches, security, and other complexities of IT. They can offload that to somebody. They basically are interested in saving money, getting the level of service that they want at a high quality. And the beauty is you, as a telco, are already offering these customers IP access, VPNs, T1s, and other services on the comm side. So now you have cloud computing as an add-on product, which is wonderful. Okay, sorting through the jargon in cloud computing can be rather tedious. I mean, just so Hamid doesn't have to explain later on, I mean, IaaS means infrastructure as a service, and PaaS is cloud is platform as a service. I knew those terms, 2 months ago when I went to the TMF forum, but I had forgotten them in the meantime, and I had to look them up myself. I think it's okay if the concepts of virtualization and cloud computing are still fuzzy to you. I mean, all this whole vocabulary that we're developing, people are fuzzy today because this market is really evolving very organically. And I don't think we should insist that cloud computing be limited only to those situations where an application is delivered across a multi-tenant platform. I mean, from a business opportunity standpoint, this is IT hosting in all forms across the telecom infrastructure. And to be honest, this is exactly the market that U.S. telcos like Verizon, AT&T, XO Communications, and CBeyond are going after. What we do know for sure is that Moore's Law is still active. I mean, computing power will probably keep on doubling every 18 months to 2 years, and that means we're going to continue to see drastic cuts in the cost of computing. At TRI, we're launching a new website soon, and so I did a fresh investigation of the price of website hosting. And look here at the price list from GoDaddy.com, a nationally advertised ISP who operates in the U.S. It's amazing how far your money will go these days. I mean, look at this. You can get 150 gigs of storage and 25 MySQL databases for $5 a month using a shared host. Now, remember, one MySQL database can support hundreds of tables. So I ask you, how many small to medium-sized business would ever need 25 MySQL databases? I mean, a small company could probably develop some PHP and ASP programs to operate its entire business on the back end of its shared hosting domain. Okay, so what's the point? I think, there's plenty of capacity. There's going to be plenty of cloud computing. The computing side is going to be there. It's going to be very cheap. The only thing that remains is the high reliability, low latency access to the cloud. That's the big question mark, and that's the niche that telecoms can fill. So finally, how can telecoms? How can we win in this cloud environment? I think it boils down to three basic things. First, there's a lot of work to be done to turn the BOSS and turn it and make it ready for the cloud. Second, we need to target the sweet spot of the industry, mostly medium-sized businesses, and convince them that they need to add some communications intelligence to the cloud computing systems that they buy. And finally, and this is a prelude to what Hamid is going to talk about, you really need to get your portals and order management systems working well. So with that, Hamid, I'd like to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Jeremy, and thank you, Dan. Thank you, Dan, for an insightful introduction. What I would like to do is to summarize some of the key points that Dan brought up in the presentation that he had, particularly regarding why medium-sized businesses would be interested in buying cloud services. The cloud, what is being termed as cloud by the IT industry, is really a collection of technologies that enables efficient shared use of IT infrastructure in a secure setup of a data center, and small businesses and medium-sized businesses would be interested in such a service because that basically virtually eliminates any capital investment that they need to do in IT infrastructure. It lowers the overall cost of IT operations. The on-demand scalability of cloud services allows basically medium-sized businesses to adjust the requirements based on the demand that they face. Whether it's a seasonal thing or it's an event-based, they can adjust the computing resources that they need accordingly and pay for it accordingly. That's very important. These are all cost-saving aspects of cloud computing. The cloud computing offers businesses a very standard IT environment that medium-sized businesses would have to have a whole IT organization to create. The high availability of a data center, the maintenance and administration, patching that Dan talked about, backup services, and security, continuous security monitoring of security, managing firewalls. These are all the things that medium-sized businesses would not have to do on their own, and they can buy it as a service, and they can buy it on a scalable level. Buy more and pay more, or buy less and pay less as they need. So what is the service provider's position in cloud services market? Dan touched about some of the points there. I would like to summarize them. First of all, this is a win-win scenario for both the customers and the service providers. Customers win, business customers win because they save cost. Service providers win because this is a new revenue stream that they can create on top of their expensive broadband infrastructure that they have implemented over time. The service providers are in a very natural position to sell these services to medium-sized businesses. They already have existing sales relationship with them, and that selling additional services using those relationships should be an easy thing for them to do. Service providers have extensive IT infrastructure today for their own use. So this is something that they have. They know how to engineer, how to operate, and perhaps they have some spare capacity, just like the others who are selling cloud services that they can sell to small, medium-sized businesses. They have experience in running large IT infrastructure for larger enterprises. These are dedicated infrastructures that they run for larger enterprises. So the experience is there. Some major service providers in North America are already selling infrastructure as a service and very much moving towards software as a service. The service providers are in a very good position to offer software as a service. Dan mentioned unified communications and video services. That's obviously a very natural extension of communication services that they provide today. But let's also think about how service providers can create vertical, integrated vertical solutions for different industries, healthcare, financial industry, and basically sell those to medium-sized businesses. A major advantage that service providers have in this cloud services market is their ability to offer end-to-end SLAs. They offer SLAs today on various network services, whether it's throughput, latency, jitter, peak, burst, or anything else that they sell today, and they have with their customers in terms of SLAs. They can extend that to a cloud infrastructure and basically provide businesses with guarantee of service that is important to a businessman, which is the availability of the application that they need to generate revenue. They really don't care about the individual piece parts of an SLA. They don't care about the access network and the IT physical infrastructure or the server. What they need is the ultimate application that they use for their business. So this ability of service providers to guarantee the availability of mission-critical applications would be a major advantage for them over cloud service providers who don't have the access and the communication piece. Another area that service providers are very well positioned to take advantage of is becoming the one-stop shop for both communications and computing services to these medium-sized businesses. Again, medium-sized businesses are not interested or become technical experts. They have their own business, and technology and its complexity is not the core competency they want to have. So it's a very good position that service providers have to become the virtual CIO for these medium-sized businesses and basically give them a complete end-to-end solutions, the communications and the applications they need and the infrastructure they need to run those applications, all in the form of cloud services. But let's not fool ourselves. There is tough competition out there for CSPs. There are already major players in the cloud services business. Google and Amazon are examples of that. Google with their Office app and Amazon obviously with their cloud IT infrastructure services that they sell. You also have other competitors like Oracle and Microsoft, who are very much getting geared up to support to sell these services directly to their customers. And of course, there will be other CSPs who would compete for the business of these small and medium-sized businesses. You will, as we will discuss later, this competition has a direct impact on how CSPs would operate cloud services and how would they sell it and how would they manage it. So this talk really focuses on the operations impact of providing cloud services. So I was not planning to go into any details about cloud services themselves, and this is not to minimize the complexity of how you create cloud services products, how you price them, how do you bundle them. That's all very good topic perhaps for a future webinar, and we have Aricent experts in that space who can certainly have done a lot of work in that space and can basically provide advice on how to monetize cloud services. But I'm going to be focusing how your OSS, BSS, and operations of CSP providers will be impacted by this cloud services offering. I'm going to use some of ETOM language in describing this impact, and hopefully everybody's familiar with the enhanced telecom operations model, which is a TMF forum standard, and would understand what I'm talking about here. First, let's talk about fulfillment. How do you provide fulfillment for cloud services in a CSP environment? Now, self-service capability is a fundamental requirement of cloud services. All of the competitors that we talked about before very much offer online self-service capability to end customers to basically in real time provide computing services and computing resources, be it storage, CPU, memory, virtual machines, but this all can be done almost in real time via a customer administrator. And this is a very fundamental capability that we have to keep in mind because it does impact the OSS, BSS infrastructure quite a bit. This self-service capability needs to be accessible both from a desktop and wireless devices, not in a very distant future, with the coming of 4G and very smart devices that we see. iPad is one of them. This is becoming a real requirement that not only administrators would have access to these capabilities, self-service capabilities from a desktop, but also from their smart devices. On-demand service provisioning. So we talked about the fact that enterprises would be interested in this service because they can basically adjust their resources based on the actual requirements that they have for their business. And they want to do that in real time, and that's how they would save money. If they need more resources for an event or something that generates revenue for them, they can pay more for it, and they would like to do that then. And if they need less, they would like to reduce the resources and pay less for it. That elasticity is what's very attractive to medium-sized businesses. So the on-demand service provisioning has another major impact on the OSS BSS infrastructure. As you can imagine, how these orders would flow through that infrastructure through the various functions, and we're going to have some case studies, use cases that we're going to talk about as how that happens and how that could happen and how it would impact various systems.
Hamid, you just put on the
sure.
slide show about integrated IT and network solution selling. Can you elaborate on that? I think people are curious what you mean by that exactly.
Oh, sure. That's a very good question, Dan. So small and medium-sized businesses are really interested in their business goals. They don't want to become basically telecom and IT experts. This positions the CSPs to become their virtual CIOs by providing them with complete solutions that include the communications piece as well as the IT piece, in a way that would help their business, but also takes away the complexity of basically putting all these pieces together. This is where the service providers can have very sophisticated online capabilities to support medium-sized businesses basically navigating a complex environment of IT, various communication capabilities and services, and IT applications and resource requirements in an easy way to come up with a complete solution that would help their particular industry. This is what we call profile-based selling. Basically, a preset of rules of how these solutions or how this capability would be pulled together for a particular vertical, let's say a doctor's office or an accounting office with multiple locations. And this is where CSPs can really take advantage of their both communications infrastructure and cloud services offering in a way that would sell to these medium-sized businesses who don't want to become expert in this space. At Aricent, we recently did a study of several major service providers and their website, really comparing them using 9 different metrics in terms of how good they are in selling solutions to customers. And as it turned out, although some of them have some limited capability in selling solutions to customers, none of them really have a well-designed web portal with capabilities to sell full solutions to customers, and that's something that is a very open opportunity for CSPs to get into. Service assurance is another space that very much gets impacted by cloud service offering. First of all, CSPs have significant experience in monitoring and fault managing their networks. I mean, that's a core competency that they have. They also have quite a bit of experience in running large data centers and managing them and providing IT support services to internal users. So experience is not a question here. What really the impact is how you bring these two environments together and how you integrate them as a seamless operations capability as far as the end customers, your medium-sized enterprises are concerned. So they see it as a cohesive operation that takes care of their needs all the way from the access point to the application. That's basically the end-to-end SLA that we talked about before. This would become very clear where there are some troubles or some faults that needs to be isolated in this entire chain. Today, in a typical company, if a user has an application problem, they go to their IT shop. And what the IT shop does, IT shop tries to isolate the problem to see if it's in the PC or the LAN, basically whether it's local, or whether it has to do with the server and the data center space and the application there, or it's the issue, a communications issue, which includes some services from some CSP as well as firewall issues, etc. In a cloud services environment where CSP offers the entire end-to-end service, that function would be basically a function that the CSP would have to provide, the trouble, isolation, and resolution. And this could be even done in a way that the end user files the trouble reports online. And that's how it gets resolved by the CSP. So that capability has to be there. SLA monitoring, we talked about that quite a bit. Again, the SLA monitoring is done today in CSPs, no question. But bringing it together between the IT environment that the cloud services basically is and the network, and presenting it in an intelligent way as a performance dashboard to the end, to the customer administrator, if you will, is another area that will be impacted, and CSPs have to be concerned about in developing their plans for cloud service offering. Let's talk about billing.
Hamid, if I could interrupt, CSPs, they're already managing pretty elaborate SLAs with their enterprise customers. I mean, how is this going to be different?
That's very true. In fact, some of the larger CSPs with large customers have elaborate SLAs, including IT type SLAs that they manage for them. But these are usually done on a one-off basis with very specific contracts and with dedicated manpower and capabilities. The difference here is really the scale and size. Hopefully, these cloud services would be selling to thousands, if not 10,000s of medium-sized enterprises who would subscribe to this service. And to be able to provide that level of SLA management and fault isolation and troubleshooting, significant additional automation has to take place and integration between the various systems that many CSPs may already have, or some additional capabilities that they may need to bring in. But developing that integrated capability and putting in place the right metrics, the right instrumentation and the right presentation to customer to manage all that at a very large scale is really the challenge. The Aricent experts have done quite a bit of a study in that space in terms of designing what are the right KPIs and KQIs for doing this kind of end-to-end SLA management and basically customer experience management. Billing. Billing is going to be impacted again in an online fashion. I mean, CSPs have very sophisticated billing capabilities today. They provide online billing and very complex bill presentment to especially enterprises. Those capabilities are all there. What is different, or what would be impacted with cloud services goes back to this same self-service and on-demand service provisioning capability. That implies the ability to do online purchasing in real time. And the online purchasing would have to include accurate pricing and terms and contract terms. So that whatever the customer sees at the time that they purchase additional computing resources or additional services, the price that they see for it and the terms they see for it has to appear on their bill accordingly. So that becomes a crucial difference between what is mostly there today and what needs to be there for cloud services. Many CSPs deal with very complex environment in terms of pricing for the products and billing for the products and contract management of deals that they have with various business owners. And all that has to be brought together in a seamless online capability as far as cloud services are concerned. Mediation systems would have to be enhanced to allow per-use billing capability. We talked about the fact that the attraction of these services to medium enterprises is really the cost savings that they can get by having per-use capability of the resources. Billing settlement with third parties. Again, in a cloud services environment, it's very possible that service providers would have to deal with hundreds of application providers, third-party application providers who would provide basically software as a service to the medium-sized businesses, and probably a lot of those application providers are going to go through CSPs as a sales channel. That would be the best way of doing it. I think I'm running a bit slow. I've got to go a bit faster on this. So this billing settlement with third parties could become quite complicated if you scale it up to thousands of users and hundreds of application providers. And there could be many different models, whether it's going to be license-based or it's going to be transaction-based, as how you bill the customer and therefore how you would settle the billing with the third party. And finally, the single bill, which is always the good old single bill, is a very important requirement for telecom, and the ability for enterprises to be able to allocate their costs to the right internal group, etc., would be very important in this environment. And again, keep in mind that by having the on-demand capability and adjusting the resources up and down, there could be quite a bit of variation in the bill that the customer sees at the end of the month or the billing cycle. Okay, Jeremy, on to you for the poll question.
Hamid, thank you. Yes, the first of our polls is up now. It's our time to ask you a question, so feel free to give it to us right between the eyes and tell us what you think. The first question is, how ready is your BSS OSS infrastructure to support cloud services? And the first option is fully ready with integrated self-service capability for network and cloud services. Second is have a well-defined roadmap and execution plan with implementation now underway. C, we have started planning for cloud services. Or D, we haven't yet started. So that is, how ready is your BSS OSS infrastructure to support cloud services? And I see the results are still coming in, but already there's a pretty fair demonstration of the results in that there's 45% have indicated the third answer, C, that they have started planning for cloud services, and equal numbers, almost exactly equal numbers, just under 30% have indicated either that they are fully ready with integrated self-service capability, which is impressive, or that they haven't yet started. I think that's interesting. Hamid, does that accord with your experience?
Naturally, I find this to be quite impressive that 25% of the audience have full capability, self-service capability today to do cloud services. Unless these audience are from some of the more internet-oriented companies, that is not my experience with CSPs, at least at this stage. I don't believe that 25% of the CSPs I deal with are fully ready with self-service capability. So this could include other types of companies in this polling.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Hamid. Let's crack on with the rest of your presentation. That's really good.
All right, so what I want to do now, I want to basically do a quick use case to demonstrate how cloud services could work in a CSP environment and the OSS BSS integrated environment. And I'm going to do this very quickly. So let's assume, it's a very simple case, let's assume that we have a customer with 3 different locations with broadband access and VPN connectivity between these locations and some existing network SLAs. Let's also assume that this customer is a subscriber to cloud services in the CSP environment, has some computing resources for hosting some of the applications that they have, document management and webcasting applications, let's say, and they also subscribe to the service providers' unified communication and collaboration software as a service. So here's the scenario. Let's look at this. Let's say that the customer administrator receives a threshold alarm that there is a CPU utilization issue with the cloud services. The customer administrator would have access to a performance dashboard that would allow he or she to quickly assess what is the issue with this CPU utilization issue. And by that, I mean that the administrator is able to look at the entire picture, can look at what's going on at which location, what type of communications or type of protocol, if you will, is going on between the location and the cloud services, and can basically view the hotspots both from on the network side as well as the computing side. So let's say that the administrator decides that additional computing resources are needed and basically places an order with the system using the self-service interface for additional CPU power. In this example, the OSS BSS infrastructure has the necessary intelligence to basically take that order and do an analysis, automated analysis on it. Basically, let's assume the SLA management system looks at this order and assesses that in order to, or recommends to the operator, to the customer administrator, that in order to maintain the SLAs that we have, particularly in latency SLAs, let's say, based on the historical data that we already have in the system, additional CPU power would require also additional bandwidth between these locations and the network. Otherwise, there could be a latency issue and therefore an SLA issue. Customer can basically view this recommendation, including the impact on pricing, and make a decision as whether they want to go ahead with that recommendation or not. Again, the customer administrator may decide that it's fine for latency because of the particular event or issue that he knows about organizationally, but he may decide also that it's time to get additional bandwidth, at least for this temporary bandwidth, and basically places an order that gets activated by the activation system, and also the necessary information flows to additional systems, billing and SLA management system to update the entire record in OSS BSS infrastructure. It's a very, I would admit, it's a very simplistic example of what could happen, but the audience can imagine the complexity of interaction between the various subsystems that is needed to accomplish a capability like this at the user interface with the customer admin. Okay, time for the next poll question.
Hamid, thank you. Yeah, thanks. Second poll question. Is your customer portal self-service enabled? The first answer is yes, fully. That's most fulfillment, service assurance, and billing operations are self-service enabled. Secondly, largely, that is, most operations are self-service enabled. Some operations require human interface. Thirdly, partially self-service enabled. i.e. some operations are self-service enabled, but most operations require a human interface. Or fourthly, not at all. It's an informational website only. You can give no vote, but we'd appreciate your answers. And let's have a look at the results on that. In fact, we've still got results coming in, but we're seeing that by far the most part are answering partially, Hamid. They're saying some operations are self-service enabled. That's 64% at the moment, are indicating that only some operations are requiring a human interface. Does that accord with your experience as well?
Yes, it certainly does. I think this particular result makes quite a bit of sense, and this is the study that I mentioned before that the Aricent did basically points to the same situation, that there are some limited capabilities for the solution buying and self-service fulfillment on various providers' websites, but there is significant room to improve those capabilities, and this poll very much confirms that.
Okay, thanks.
So how do we go and prepare the OSS BSS infrastructure for cloud services? So we talked about all the impact and all the potential issues that a CSP planner would have to look out for. But how do you actually go about doing this? So at Aricent, we have developed a very particular approach for optimizing the CSP's operations and OSS BSS infrastructure and getting it ready for cloud services. And this approach really focuses in three different areas. The first area that we focus on is self-service. Most CSPs have significant investment in their OSS BSS infrastructure. Maybe there are some greenfield or startup CSPs in developing countries or other places that aren't there yet, but most other CSPs have quite a bit of investment in that infrastructure. So that's where we start. Any self-service capabilities to be brought to a CSP environment would have to take advantage of that existing investment. What we do is really look at the existing architecture and the systems and the capabilities, and look at any gaps that exist from a integration point perspective, from a capability of subsystems, etc. And using that information and additional inputs on the business side, what are the business requirements, business goals, any constraints that may be there, basically bringing all that information together from key stakeholders, business side, IT side, and operations. We develop a transformation roadmap as how where you are right now, where a CSP is today, how they can get to where they should be for an optimal system capability to offer cloud services. A major part of that work is really developing a sort of detailed use cases. We went over a very simplistic situation for a customer and its interactions with OSS BSS infrastructure. In reality, significant details are required in terms of how various systems and subsystems would have to interface with each other and what kind of data has to go between them to accomplish any one of these tasks. And that's basically the idea behind use cases for in each of these areas: the on-demand service orders, the service assurance and SLA management that we talked about, the whole issue of how do you integrate network and IT service assurance domains, the billing and mediation we talked about. So in each one of those cases, we develop a set of very detailed use cases, which basically become the prelude to requirements, system requirements, and design specification. In that process, we do very similar gap assessment in terms of providing a performance dashboard for cloud services. Again, the performance dashboard for cloud services has to take into account both the IT domain and the network domain from a customer's perspective, and provide that kind of a meaningful information to the customer so they can take action in real time as they need to. Some of the providers today of cloud services have quite sophisticated interfaces in that space. Amazon CloudWatch is something that the audience may want to take a look at to see what they've done there. The fact is that CloudWatch is only IT oriented, but it's a pretty sophisticated capability they have developed there.
Hamid, I got a question for you.
Sure.
I mean, to what extent is this environment going to be fully mechanized, and how real-time is the fulfillment of these services going to be?
For cloud services, the environment has to be mechanized. Now, true that if you have orders, let's say, and we all in telecom know this, if there are orders that involve actual physical facilities, digging the ground for fibers, or cloud orders that require data center expansion, or things of that nature, those cannot be instantaneous. That kind of an order would have to take its course and gets done in due time. But once the physical infrastructure is in place, to instantly provision resources for cloud services customers, enterprise, medium enterprises, and businesses, it's a table stake. That capability has to be there, and there is no reason why that capability couldn't be there. The cloud service providers do it today, and there are many of them that have very sophisticated interfaces for doing that. CSPs do that today for many types of network services. It's really the matter of bringing them together in a cohesive, integrated fashion, so a medium-sized business customer can really look at the CSP as their virtual CIO and give them the advantages, the cost advantages that we talked about, and that very much can be done and should be done. It's a table stake. Let's talk about another area that we focus in terms of optimization, the cloud service optimization. This is the area of user experience. Again, CSPs would be competing with very sophisticated internet providers. We use Google and Amazon many times, but these companies are very experienced and have a wealth of knowledge about internet commerce and user interface and how to deal with customers. CSPs have their knowledge as well, but we believe the user experience on many of the CSPs websites needs significant improvement. So doing a portal usability gap analysis to really develop a competitive user interface is a key in this optimization process of the OSS BSS infrastructure. Our Frog design organization in Aricent is world renowned for their ability to do that kind of a design for companies who are really interested to provide a differentiating capability to their users and make it basically sticky. This user experience is a very important factor in keeping the customers around and providing the underlying capabilities in a way that users, the customer experience is excellent, and they love it and they come back to have more of it, kind of a thing. The next area, so after all the roadmap planning, use cases, and assessment, is really how you go about to transform your OSS BSS. This is obviously the most important part of this whole activity, to actually deliver the capabilities. The big issue that we experience in Aricent is always that this kind of initiative requires parallel planning and parallel execution by various IT groups, by various vendors of applications to the customer, by various organizations, involvement, operations, etc. And program managing this kind of initiative is a major function to assure on-time delivery to enable cloud services offerings. A factor that we all must keep in mind that in a cloud services environment, the competition is going to be extremely tough, and the ability to roll out new capabilities, new pricing, bundling, or new features and products in a very timely, rapid fashion, in a matter of days or weeks, not months, would be critical success factors. Aricent basically has the knowledge and methodology to help you to do that kind of a large-scale program management, and also bring in the necessary resources if needed to do BSS, OSS enhancement, custom software development, customization, or system integration testing. Again, if you roll out a capability like this in front of your customers, it is absolutely critical to have a complete end-to-end system integration testing before such a capability is basically presented to a large number of customers. Other services that sometimes are needed are data migration and application maintenance. These are, again, things that Aricent is very much involved with. Okay, last poll question, Jeremy. Please go ahead.
Hamid, thank you. Yes, the last poll question is, what is the most challenging area of OSS BSS infrastructure for supporting cloud services? Is it A, the most challenging is web portal design and integration with OSS BSS, or do you find that the most challenging area is on-demand provisioning flow-through? Is it C, integration of IT cloud and network service assurance systems? Is it 4, billing and mediation enhancements? Or 5, very realistically included, all of the above? So what is the most challenging area of OSS BSS infrastructure for supporting cloud services? We've got it hasn't changed too much. We've got a fairly static result coming through here, and that is that 42% are indicating on-demand provisioning flow-through is the greatest. It's about 4 in 10. It's fluctuating around there, and around 3 in 10 say all of the above. Hamid, could you comment?
Yes, sure. It's actually very interesting results. I would have expected a higher percentage in all of the above category, but clearly on-demand provisioning flow-through is one of the more complicated areas in OSS BSS to work on, especially if you're looking in real-time activation of services that span both the IT and network domain. So that is also makes a lot of sense.
Thank you.
So we're almost running out of time, so let me be very quick here. Without getting into a lot of details, we have a very well-defined methodology at Aricent that we follow in executing this kind of a project. We call it DART, and I'll be more than happy to explain that to individuals since we're really running out of time here, but it's a very comprehensive methodology and has very specific stages and deliverables for each stage to get to the point that we talked about in all those 3 areas: the self-service capability, user experience assessment, and actually delivering the OSS BSS capabilities. And then in summary, just to summarize the discussion, Aricent really brings together a very unique set of capabilities to help service providers to help them to bring cloud services offering and products to their customers and basically create the new revenue streams for themselves. We think we have the right experience in every one of the areas we talked about to help you to do that. And really the approach can be summarized in 3 steps. We assess what is the impact of cloud service offerings on your operations and systems. We develop an optimization plan as how you can best bring a capability of customer experience and service management for cloud services. And finally, we help you by providing you the right resources and methodology to actually transform your OSS and BSS operations for cloud services. So back to you, Jeremy.
Hamid, thanks. I think that's given us all a far better understanding of the target market, first of all, for cloud services, as well as the win-win model. You made that very clear early on. There's a win-win here for medium-sized businesses and service providers. There are plenty of questions already in, and we're never going to get through them all in the time, but let's get to them as quickly as we can. The first one I wanted to put to you, Hamid, is security seems to be a major concern for businesses. But when it comes to, cloud computing, would that be an operational issue for CSPs? Do you think?
Very good question. I think Dan mentioned this in his introduction that in my opinion, CSPs really have an advantage here to provide much more comprehensive security capabilities in a consolidated fashion on a industry scale basis, whether it's firewall proofing, whether it is scanning for viruses, whether it is intrusion detection, or any one of these capabilities can be brought together in a much better fashion, in a consolidated way, in a cloud environment, versus individual medium-sized businesses attempting to do that on their own, which would be really inefficient. So, and yes, there would be impact on operations throughout. Again, think SLA, think dashboards, think how these capabilities would have to be integrated with the dashboard that the customer, for example, sees if there are a large number of attacks on their site that are detected and prevented, but the customer needs to know that. So there will be impact in the OSS, BSS, and operations area as a result of security for this cloud service infrastructure.
Yeah, you touched on the next question early on in your presentation, Hamid, but there's a detail here that has been raised. If the application level is not provided by the CSP, then the CSP only plays the roles of a pipe. In such case, how could CSPs guarantee end-to-end SLA? And if you could keep your answer brief, I'd like to bring Dan in on that as well, if you could.
Sure. The end-to-end SLA in that case obviously would only apply to the computing resources and would stop at that point. Clearly, if the applications are either provided by the customer themselves over the computing environment, or is a third-party applications, then service providers would not be able to take that responsibility on.
Yeah, and I would agree. I think Hamid answered the question very well there.
Any other questions, Jeremy?
Yeah, sorry. There's time for probably one more question if we're quick. Is there any difference between wholesale and retail requirements around cloud-based services?
That's a very good question. Clearly, wholesale environment would be very different in that it's the buyer would require different kinds of capabilities, assuming that the buyer is in turn going to use those resources for reselling someplace, versus a retail selling where a lot of the emphasis that we put on right now on self-service capabilities would really apply to the retail environment and less to the wholesale environment, which presumably the wholesaler would put those capabilities together for the cloud environment.
Excellent.
Yeah, well, I would say that there's some nice opportunities there for telcos to be a wholesaler to the other cloud providers. I mean, they're offering something that others can't provide, which is that, low latency access to the customer in the local loop, and that's going to become a very precious commodity as this market evolves. And so telcos in a good position there to play wholesaler.
That's a fair comment, Dan. Thank you. Thank you both. We're just about out of time, but I'd like to, before we go, do a couple of things. One is, can I remind you, please, to keep an hour free for the next webinar on new OSS and BSS models for optimizing the experience in next-gen communications. That's on Thursday, the 25th of November, and you can find details on our website at VanillaPlus.com. But I certainly can't go without saying a big thank you, first to Hamid Modarressi of Aricent, and also to Dan Baker of the Technology Research Institute.
Thank you very much, Jeremy, and VanillaPlus for pulling this thing together. And I thank you, the audience, for your time. I hope this was useful to you.
Same goes for me. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you both. Gentlemen, it's been a really interesting discussion. There are inevitably questions we haven't been able to get to. We will pass those on to Hamid and to Dan, and where appropriate, one or both will come back to you. We really want to thank you for your participation today. We do appreciate the time you spent, and we all hope you have a great day. Until the next time, bye for now.